morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, worth a shot. It's a big day for the FDA. An advisory panel is getting ready to discuss the benefits of a COVID-19 booster. The new data that's up for debate, including new questions about the effectiveness of a mix and match approach. 24/7, President Biden vowing to stop a global supply shortage at the source with an aggressive staffing plan at some of the busiest U.S. ports to run them around the clock.
We've seen the cost of inaction in the pandemic, and the delays and the congestion that affect every American. But it's fully within our capacity to act to make sure it never happens again.
More on the plan to get items back on store shelves before it impacts the holiday shopping season. Sounding the alarm, Missouri's last remaining abortion provider blasting a new rule that it says puts thousands of patients at risk. How the outcome could impact everything from checkups to cancer screenings. And a deadhead's dream, your chance to own rock and roll history is here. From Jerry Garcia's guitar to the infamous wall of sound equipment and more, we'll show you the memorabilia from one of the world's most iconic jam bands that's now up for auction. That's a story you're going to bring us that looks quite cool.
Yeah, I'm not a deadhead, but it still seems very, very cool.
I'm not either, but I think that's such a cool name for a group of fans. Deadhead. Very cool. All right, we'll get into that a little bit later, but today we'll start with that FDA panel meeting to consider booster shots for the millions of Americans who got the Moderna vaccine.
Those experts will be busy the next few days. After today's meeting, the panel will come back tomorrow to consider boosters for the Johnson & Johnson shot, as well as the possibility of mixing and matching different vaccines. So far, nearly 9 million Americans have received a booster dose. If Moderna and J&J boosters are approved, millions more Americans who are 6 months out from their last shot will be eligible. We have a team ready to break down everything you need to know about the booster shots. Let's begin with NBC News correspondent Megan Fitzgerald. She's in Chicago, outside of CVS, that's already handing out Pfizer boosters. So, Megan, quite a few steps in order to get a booster shot authorized. Remind us, what's that process like? What can we expect today?
Joe, good morning to you. Yes, this is a very long and extensive and methodical process. I want to walk you through each of these steps. So first, of course, the company, in this case, Moderna, tomorrow, of course, will be focusing on J&J. They're going to file for the FDA authorization. Then the FDA is going to hold a series of meetings, and they're going to vote on those recommendations. They're going to be assessing and analyzing all of the data. Then the FDA, of course, will issue their decision. Then it goes to the CDC. The CDC then holds meetings, and then they vote on the vaccine. The last and final step here is when the CDC director signs off on the recommendation. So certainly a lengthy process. We expect it to last throughout the day today, and then tomorrow for Johnson & Johnson throughout the day as well, before we understand whether or not these boosters will be approved.
Here's one of the key questions before the FDA, which is, what do we know about the Moderna booster so far and how well it protects people from COVID?
So Moderna is saying that a booster shot is needed because their vaccine wanes over time. And so what they're doing here is they're recommending half a dose of their vaccine. They say that that will increase the immune response against COVID-19. And it's also going to free up supply. So as opposed to that full dose that people received the first and the second shot, again, this is half a dose. So there'll be more supply, and they'll be able to provide more boosters to people more efficiently, Joe.
And Megan, how are federal health officials preparing for the rollout if Moderna and Johnson & Johnson boosters are both authorized at the same time? Is everything in place to handle that right off the bat?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Federal health authorities, as well as the White House, says they're ready. And as soon as the boosters are approved, if in fact they are approved, they say they're ready to hit the ground running. I want you to listen to what the White House had to say.
As we await the FDA and the CDC's decisions on potential Moderna and J&J boosters in the coming days, we're working with our partners to prepare. We have the vaccine supply, and we will be ready to hit the ground running as soon as any additional boosters are authorized.
And so this means in the coming weeks, if these boosters are approved, additional millions of Americans could be eligible for this booster shot. Joe?
All right, big day at the FDA. Megan, thanks for kicking off our coverage.
Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor, Dr. Ebony Hilton. Dr. Hilton, good to see you. So FDA scientists said earlier this week that the initial 2 doses of Moderna are still enough protection. So this is a little confusing. Walk us through what you think is going to happen in this meeting today. Would the FDA move forward with a Moderna booster shot?
Yeah, it's one of those things. We saw the same thing with the Pfizer. We know that the vaccines have done a fantastic job at protecting against the severity of COVID-19. So keeping people out of the hospital, keeping them out of the ventilator, keeping them out of the ICU, and unfortunately, or fortunately, keeping them from dying. But we know that there's more potential that we can help to prevent people from being infected. And I think that's what the CDC, when you see the difference in what the FDA is doing and what the CDC is doing, they're both looking at the same set of data. But what's the goal of this? And what we know is that at this point, the more people that we can prevent from getting infected, we can hopefully stop having what we have now, where 2,000 people are still dying a day. That's one person every 47 seconds. And we have to do something to slow the spread of this disease.
Yeah, doctor, I've got another booster shot question for you. This one's an interesting one. A study from the National Institutes of Health found that mixing and matching COVID boosters are safe and effective. And it actually specifically found that people who received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine produced stronger antibody levels after they got a Moderna or Pfizer booster. So how does mixing and matching work? Do you think that that's something the FDA and the CDC would back?
Right. I think it's going to be one of the things they consider, especially in the long run. What we know is that at this point, there have been many different people that's getting at their institutions different vaccines, and they want to know what is actually available for me. I know there were persons who received the Johnson & Johnson and the Moderna vaccine that when the Pfizer said they can get their booster shot, they said, can I get that booster shot because it's available? We're going to look at this study. This study that the NIH presented literally was on safety, and that's a great thing that it shows that it is safe to mix and match. Now, the question is going to be on efficacy. And so they're going to follow those persons out for the better part of a year to see, do you have the same protection? Do you have that lasting immunity that we're hoping to gain from COVID-19? Because we know this is not a problem that's going to go away tomorrow. So I'm hopeful for it.
Absolutely. And Dr. Hilton, of course, we're focusing a lot on booster shots. I just asked you a bunch of questions about them, but there are still millions of Americans who haven't received even their first dose. So if they get vaccinated now, what kind of protection do they have? How long could it last?
Right. What we know is that at least for the 2-dose series, they still have a great protection against severe COVID-19. And what we're going to see in the next couple of months is it's not only just the persons, the adults who've been waiting. We're going to start to see kids now being vaccinated. And hopefully we can get closer and closer to that herd immunity that we've been trying to target. But that requires 70, 80% of all Americans to be vaccinated. And then we have to think globally. And at this point, there's still only 2.4% of those poorest countries that's even received the first dose of their COVID vaccine. So we have a ways to go.
Yeah, we certainly do. Dr. Ebony Hilton, thank you so much.
President Biden is taking steps to tackle the supply chain crisis. Those shortages are wreaking havoc on big and small businesses alike, leaving many store shelves empty ahead of the busy holiday season. Yesterday, the president announced that the Port of L.A. would now operate around the clock. He hopes that'll help alleviate the bottleneck there amid scenes of cargo ships stranded off the coast.
By staying open 7 days a week through the night and on the weekends, the Port of Los Angeles will open over 60 extra hours a week will be open. In total, that will almost double the number of hours that the port is open for business from earlier this year. That means an increase in the hours for workers to be moving cargo off ships onto trucks and rail cars to get to their destination.
NBCNews.com senior White House reporter Shannon Pettypiece joins us, along with our senior business reporter Ben Popkin. Good morning to both of you. So, Shannon, President Biden brought together business leaders at the White House to talk about these supply chain issues. How's he planning to tackle them? What does he want from the private sector?
Well, he's hoping this is going to be a big first step because the Port of Los Angeles, along with the Port of Long Beach, which recently also extended hours, they account for about 40% of cargo that comes into the U.S. And the president said that having these late hours also makes it more efficient because if anybody's been to L.A., you know there is a lot less traffic late at night for helping those trucks get in and out of the port. Here's a little bit more what the president had to say.
Strengthening our supply chain will continue to be my team's focus. If federal support is needed, I will direct all appropriate action. And if the private sector doesn't step up, we're going to call them out and ask them to act. Because our goal is not only to get through this immediate bottleneck, but to address the long-standing weaknesses in our transportation supply chain that this pandemic has exposed.
So the president there, as you mentioned, calling out the private sector, he said that it is a supply chain. There are many links. This is just one of them. Other companies need to step up too. You need the trucks to drive those goods to the stores and the trains to transport the products. You also need people, frankly, at the physical retail store there at some of those late hours to unload the trucks when that cargo comes in. So certainly signaling more is to be done. And the White House hopes it can be the one to kind of bring these links of the supply chain together, which they say yesterday was a first example of how they're going to do that.
All right, that's the political side of things. Ben, what do businesses think of these plans? Do they go far enough to address the needs of both big and small companies?
Well, small businesses have had to pay double, even triple freight costs due to these port delays, had to add on 2 months or more for delivery of basic items. And much of this gets passed on to the consumer, companies jacking up prices, cutting corners on service. So small businesses cheer anything that might unclog these ports, but the ports are just one part of the puzzle. Small businesses say that large companies, they can pay to get cargo space, hire private cargo ships, fast track the unloading of their containers. Small companies, they might only have one container. They may not have the clout or dozens of containers to qualify for kind of white glove service at the ports, but that one container that they have could represent 2 months of payroll. And that's where small businesses are saying that this move to run the ports 24/7 is a good first step, but the White House still needs to step up.
So, Shannon, if you're the president, undelivered toys at Christmas and anything else that disrupts the holidays, those are some of the last things he wants right now. So how damaging could this be for him politically? Could we see the government step in and take on a bigger role if things don't get better?
Well, I mean, not only could it spoil Christmas, but these effects could ripple through the economy for months well into 2022. And that's something that White House officials and administration officials have begun to acknowledge, that inflationary pressures, product shortages, labor shortages, they're not going to resolve next month. This is going to be something ongoing into next year. And politically, that, poses a big risk for Democrats, because next year we happen to have an election, a midterm election, with every member of the House of Representatives up for re-election. So this is an area you can see the White House focused on now. It has been going on for many months, but it has clearly got the White House's increased attention now. And you heard the president there saying he will step in and take more federal action if need be.
Shannon mentioned inflation. Ben, we're seeing this supply chain crisis translate to higher prices across the board. Inflation hitting a 13-year high in September. Should Americans be prepared for prices to stay higher for a longer period of time?
Well, just like Shannon was saying, experts are saying, grab your wallets, because inflation is not going anywhere fast. Officials have been saying inflation is transitory or temporary, but how long really is temporary? These supply chain backups, they're not going to start getting resolved well into 2022. That's when we'll see prices start coming down a bit as there's more of a flow of goods to meet demand. But until then, consumers are really stuck in this gamble. Can you afford to wait for the price to eventually drop, or do you buy now before it goes up even more in the short term?
A lot of folks are going to be paying attention to this in the coming months with the holidays coming. All these warnings: get your shopping done now, get your Christmas tree now, and so much more. Right, Shannon, Ben, thanks for breaking this down for us this morning. We appreciate it.
Yesterday's successful Blue Origin rocket launch made history as Star Trek icon William Shatner became the oldest person to ever visit space at 90 years old.
Here's what a clearly moved Shatner had to say about the experience right after landing.
What you have given me is the most profound experience I can imagine. I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened. It's extraordinary, extraordinary.
Joining us now is someone who also knows that feeling, Joan Higginbotham. She's an electrical engineer and retired NASA astronaut, and she spent 12 days on the International Space Station in 2006. Good morning, Joan. It's great to have you with us. We're lucky to have you to break this down with us. So Shatner was obviously very emotional there. What are your feelings hearing him describe the experience, and what was your own like?
Good morning to both of you, and thank you for having me. Yeah, it brought back a lot of memories. I didn't know if he was going to experience like what most astronauts do because it was such a quick trip, but just seeing Earth from a different lens obviously moved him, and that's the experience I definitely had. I went up to space. I got to see Earth from a very different vantage point, and it really made me look at the Earth in a different way. She is very fragile. We need to be very mindful of how we treat her. And then it gave me a very different perspective on humanity, just trying to be, as I say, a gentler, kinder person to everybody on Earth.
Whatever it takes to maybe get people to feel that way.
Yeah.
We should try and get everyone out there into space so we have a gentler, kinder Earth. You know, you spent 9 years with NASA starting in 1987. The space industry has changed so much so quickly. What are your thoughts about this new era of space travel that's upon us and the private companies that are offering these kinds of experiences to those who can pay right now a pretty high price, but those who can pay?
Yeah, so I actually spent 20 years with NASA. So I started off as a rocket scientist launching rockets and shuttles and then getting to fly on one. And I've seen the industry change so much during that time. And it's really interesting that we have these new private space companies now that can offer taking people as well as equipment up for a little cheaper price. And what that allows NASA to do, it frees them up so that they can now concentrate on getting back to the moon and going to Mars. So you still have people that are in low Earth orbit, LEO, as we call it, where the space station is. Those are the private companies. And then you have NASA that's going to venture out further into space. So it's a great partnership, and I think it's going to work well.
And Jen, what do you think these high-profile launches with somebody like William Shatner on board does for inspiring young people to get into space exploration?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, who better a brand ambassador than Captain Kirk, who, for 10 or so years went to different planets on Star Trek, who really now is a spacefarer and got to go to the edge of Earth. So if that's not inspirational, I don't know what is. But I think that if everyone just got to see a launch, that in itself would be inspiring. There's no such thing as a bad launch. And once you see one, you will be hooked.
Look at even this video, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, what is your hope, especially in the wake of seeing William Shatner's experience, which seemed almost spiritual when he was talking at the end? What is your hope for this as it moves forward in the coming years?
That we will be able to actually get more people up there. I mean, to his point, if people could have that experience, it is, as cliche as it sounds, it is life-changing. And maybe it will make the world a better place, and that's what I'm hoping for.
All right.
Absolutely. And Joan, we love your astronaut Barbie right over your shoulder there. You are so cool, the real life one.
Thank you so much, Joan.
Thank you. Let's now get a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Bill Cairns is with us. Hey there, Bill. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. You guys, I was thinking, who's going to be next? Like celebrities or like, maybe presidents of countries? Yeah.
I don't know.
And we have to wonder who the first new, who's the next first news anchor is going to be to do it too. So maybe one of you two. Good luck, though. All right, so I'll watch. Here's what we're going to be dealing with in the middle of the country. Overnight, we've had some really heavy rain and flash flooding problems around San Antonio. This cluster of thunderstorms has just slowly been drifting, and those are always troublesome. Whenever you get these thunderstorm complexes that barely move, you can see it there located, was over San Antonio. Now it's drifting just north of Victoria, so that's by far the worst weather in the country right now. There's also some areas of rain up to the north of that. The flash flood watches, a lot of them have been dropped, but the ones obviously still around San Antonio still are up, but those will be ending. The heavy rain threat is ending, but we're still going to watch rainfall later today and tomorrow. It's all going to shift into the Midwest, and we could even deal with some severe storms out of this. Now, this isn't for today. This is for tomorrow. If you have Friday afternoon or evening plans right along the Ohio River all the way down the Mississippi, almost towards Memphis, just to the north of Nashville, about 9 million people are in a slight risk of severe weather, maybe a few tornadoes, but definitely strong wind wind gusts and some large hail. So this is how that mess is going to go. The Texas storm drifts northwards. Today's not too bad, just some isolated storms in the Ohio Valley. But tomorrow, as this storm gets a little more juice to it, and that's tomorrow afternoon when we're going to see the best chance of severe weather. Driving on I-70 or anywhere through Kentucky could be kind of rough. So the forecast then eventually takes this storm all the way into the northeast. And as we go through Saturday afternoon, D.C., Philly, New York, all the way through the Hudson Valley, a line of thunderstorms will be sweeping through. So keep that in mind for your Saturday afternoon plans. So for today, still feels like summer, ridiculous. 80 degrees in Washington, D.C. today. Even Boston is going to be at 75. Boston should be in like the 50s and 60s this time of year. And on Friday, still unusually warm, guys, all the way up and down the eastern seaboard. D.C., mid-80s and near record highs.
Oh, my goodness.
I think we need our first weatherman in space, Bill.
Oof. No, I'm too afraid. No. All
right.
I think I might be too,
honest.
especially with those delays. I would be having a freak out. All right, thanks, Bill. And coming up, the last abortion clinic in Missouri now threatened with closure. The new rule that Planned Parenthood says puts its patients at risk and how it could impact their access to all kinds of health care.
Also breaking overnight, dozens killed in a high-rise apartment fire in Taiwan. We'll have the latest next on Morning News Now.
Planned Parenthood says it's once again being targeted by a conservative legislature in Missouri. Back in 2019, they won a legal battle to keep their abortion license in the state, and now Planned Parenthood in St. Louis is the only abortion provider in Missouri. But their clinics across the state could lose Medicaid funding for even non-abortion services after new emergency rules went into effect yesterday. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber joins us now from outside that Planned Parenthood in St. Louis with more. Ellison, good morning. So tell us about these new rules and how do they threaten the future of Planned Parenthood in Missouri for healthcare services in general?
So these are new rules that specifically focus on Medicare, and they are aimed at chipping away at abortion access in this state. Planned Parenthood is the sole abortion provider in this state. They have 7 clinics. Only one of them, the one where we are standing, they're the only one that actually provides abortion services. State inspectors will now report any rule violations by abortion providers directly to the state's Medicaid auditors. And violations, even if they're small ones, could lead to the state pulling Medicaid funding. So the rules are based on recommendations that were made by a Republican-led Missouri Senate committee. And in their recommendations, the committee wrote this in part, quote, "The duties of the committee were to conduct in-depth studies and make appropriate recommendations concerning the Missouri Health Net program, the protection of unborn human life, and ensuring Missouri tax dollars are spent in accordance with the values of Missourians." So Planned Parenthood, they say this is not just an attack on abortion rights, but they say it is a specific attack on their organization because, again, they are the only people providing abortions in this state. But they say it's not just about abortion here, that ultimately, in their view, these rules attacked all of their patients looking to get care, even for basic things like a breast exam. Listen.
We have come accustomed to and used to being prepared for surprise inspections from the state, really, though, with the goal, we thought, of ending abortion access. We are at even heightened awareness and expect them to show up at any time, now with a new goal, using the inspection process to eliminate family planning services for our most vulnerable and marginalized communities.
So the Hyde Amendment already prevents Medicaid dollars, federal funding. It prevents federal funding, federal tax dollars from going towards abortion. So the money that they're talking about pulling here is they're talking about pulling Medicaid funding that is used by patients who are trying to get care at one of the Planned Parenthood care clinics for anything from a breast cancer screening, pap smears, or just other basic reproductive health issues. So Planned Parenthood, they argue that this is the retooling of an old tactic. They say that the state is trying to pervert the inspection process here to chip away at them as an organization and ultimately kind of put them out of business. Savannah?
And Ellison, quickly, Planned Parenthood, I know, is now calling on the Biden administration to step in on cases like this to help save access to health care in the state. What did they tell you?
Yeah. Yeah, Medicaid, that's something that would fall under the federal government. They say the Biden administration needs to speak out here and tell the state that they do not have the authority to do this. They're also looking at their legal options. Savannah.
All right, Ellison Barber from Missouri for us. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Let's take a look at what's making news around the world this morning.
Raf Sanchez is with us this morning from Tel Aviv. Hey, Raf, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. A huge fire at a residential building in Taiwan has killed at least 46 people. The blaze ripped through the building early this morning and was finally put out around dawn. Another 40 or so people are injured. The cause right now isn't clear, but the government is investigating whether arson is to blame. In Norway, 5 people were killed last night after a man went on a rampage with a bow and arrow. Police say they have a 37-year-old Danish man in custody. They haven't yet released his name or a possible motive. It's the worst massacre in Norway in 10 years. And finally, it turns out there is life on Mars, on Earth. A 6-person team is going through an experiment in the Israeli desert where they simulate what it would be like to live for a month on Mars. The idea is to train for an eventual mission to the Red Planet. And guys, William Shatner may have been to space, but it's likely to be another decade or so before humans reach Mars.
And perhaps William Shatner at age 100 will.
Yeah, he will still be kicking it, I'm sure. So that's
Why
a
not?
possibility. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Raf. Coming up during this Hispanic Heritage Month, we explore the added challenge for students learning English during the pandemic.
Plus, reconnecting with my roots.
She was my hero and my mentor, and she inspired me all through my life.
After the break, join me as I learn more about my great-great-aunt and her many accomplishments this morning on Morning News Now.
Hamilton, a show known for its diverse casting, is now facing workplace discrimination allegations from a transgender cast member. Sunny Reed is a former touring cast member. They say they lost their job after asking for a gender-neutral dressing room. They filed a complaint Wednesday against the show's parent company with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in Los Angeles, where the incident allegedly occurred. They cite several other allegations of discrimination and harassment over the years, including times when Reed said they were physically threatened and misgendered. A spokesperson for Hamilton has denied that the show discriminated or retaliated against Reed, saying that they treated Reed with the same respect as all other cast members. Savannah?
All right, thanks, Joe. Now, we're coming to the end of Hispanic Heritage Month, and I didn't want to let it pass without sharing the story of a family member of my own that's inspired generations. A recent conversation with my mom got me thinking about how I'd like to know more about my great-great-aunt and the work she did as a pioneering educator, doctor, and philanthropist from Guadalajara. This morning, I want to share this special conversation with my grandma and my
Hi, Grandma. Hi, Mama.
Hi.
Grandma, scoot a little closer to Mama. Okay, Grandma, don't be nervous, okay? It's just us talking.
Okay.
This Hispanic Heritage Month, I wanted to dig in a little on my own family.
Sometimes I feel like I'm not Hispanic enough to claim that or to talk about it a lot. But I know how much this culture really is a part of our family and how much it was, especially for you growing up.
Yes, it was.
Our family is from Guadalajara, Mexico, and one member in particular, my great-great-aunt, left her mark not only on her descendants, but in the history books.
Doctora Irene Robledo Garcia was her full name.
She was my hero and my mentor, and she inspired me all through my life. She became a professor, a doctor, a dentist, and just traveled the world and had a world of knowledge.
She was an educator and a humanitarian with a meaningful personal motto, for a more human humanity. She helped lay the foundation of the University of Guadalajara, and she made sure to bring more women with her at a time when she was breaking feminine stereotypes left and right.
She said that she was always competing with the men, but she always kind of came out on top as a champion.
Yeah, competing and winning.
Exactly. In a man's world.
Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up and hearing about her from Grandma?
We would call her our famous aunt. How was she so many things at once? A doctor, a dentist. She had clinics for children in Mexico. I was just always amazed at how selfless she was. It was like she was a Mother Teresa in Mexico.
More than a decade after she passed away, her remains were transferred to a landmark in the heart of the city.
They exhumed the body and took it to the rotunda. They unveiled her statue at the Park of the Illustrious. At that time, she was the only woman in the park.
In fact, they had to change the name of the landmark upon her inclusion. It had been called the Rotunda de los Hombres Ilustres, or Illustrious Men. It was a celebration my grandma was present for, and seeing the statue of her aunt was a moment she'll never forget.
Oh, it was wonderful to go have it unveiled. They had a big parade. It's like all the businesses shut down. It was like a big holiday.
We all work to keep her spirit alive.
I wanted her to be proud of me.
Oh, you would have been very proud of you raising 4 girls.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I love that.
And these two share a particularly special connection to her.
And Grandma, what's your name? What's your first name?
Irene, Irene.
And Mama?
También, Irene, Irene.
Generations of women inspired by her and named after her.
Is it neat for both of you to be named after her?
Absolutely.
I'm very proud.
It's an honor.
Big thanks to them. They were a little nervous to chat with me.
They were great.
It worked out great. I know. She's the sweetest, my grandma.
She has a statue.
I know.
So
It's very neat, and it's cool to, get to connect your own roots a little bit, too. I mean, like I said in the piece, sometimes I don't claim it so much, but I know how much of a part of my family it is, and how much that statue and this particular family member means to all of us.
Exactly.
And to the country of Mexico,
the impact
really.
she had on your family is incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
The pandemic forced millions of students to adapt while learning from home, making school much harder for a lot of kids. But for many students who are learning English as a second language, it created an even bigger challenge. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas explains.
Just getting your ideas.
They straddle 2 languages and serve as a key cultural bridge at home. But English learners in the U.S. are struggling with what they lost during the pandemic.
When it was that COVID, I cannot learn nothing because at my house, there's nobody to help me.
An estimated 5 million K-12 students are enrolled as English learners across the country, and recent research found these students among those most impacted by the pandemic, with lower scores and more likely to receive failing grades.
I had almost all F's.
What about your grades?
Oh, it's bad. I have F's, C's. At the beginning, I have it only F.
It's been a tough learning loss for California teacher Jamie Olney to watch.
Of all of your English learners, what percentage actually lost some of their English language skills?
100%. And particularly in regards to speaking. We are? Excellent. Many students were also juggling household responsibilities and making sure that the family continued to run.
It was hard because I was distracted a lot because I had to share room with my sister. I forgot a lot.
Olney's students were falling behind so much that she lobbied to restart classes 7 months before schools reopened, sometimes teaching outdoors in 100-degree heat.
Why was it so important for you to bring those students back into the school?
Coming in person gave them access, so they had opportunities to practice English, to communicate, to ask questions.
You feel more good because the teacher is you and her, but when it's in computer, it's more harder.
But for some students who have high-risk health issues like Leo Monterrosa, it's not safe to go back to school yet.
He got confused, so I think we are going back with him instead of go forward.
Here.
As a student with Down syndrome, his parents say he needs extra help, and having to learn remotely is hurting his future.
In the school, he can have whatever he needs. We try to do the best we can, but it's hard for us.
Those back in school are seeing their grades rise again as they begin to catch up.
think this is going to be years and generational. So I think to recoup some of that lost time, that lost learning, that is going to be very important, that there's coordination between elementaries, middle schools, and high schools.
A combined effort to recover the forgotten words that COVID took away. Guad Venegas, NBC News, Modesto, California.
Even if you're not on TikTok, you've probably seen a viral dance here or there, but what you may not see is the creator who originated the dance, and often that creator is Black.
Yeah, many of these viral dances have catapulted white creators to TikTok stardom, while Black TikTokers are left without credit. It's not a new issue. It actually even led to an in-app protest last year dubbed the Blackout. TikTok promised to do better, but have they delivered? Joining us now to try to answer that question is NBC News youth and internet culture reporter Callan Rosenblatt, a.k.a. our resident TikTok expert who helps us on all this. Callan, good morning. So for people not on TikTok, give us some context here. I mean, this isn't just like somebody's copying your idea like back in school. This is actually impacting Black creatives and, really importantly, their ability to make money. Why is it such a big deal?
Yeah, so at first brush, it probably seems like, who cares? It's just a dance trend. You know, dance trends are huge on TikTok. But think about the dance trends that have elevated Charli D'Amelio and Addison Rae to superstardom. They're millionaires because of it. And the thing is, Jalea Harmon is the creator of the Renegade Dance. Now, the Renegade Dance is what launched Charli D'Amelio's career. It's what launched Addison Rae's career. But for a long time, Jalea wasn't known. And Jalea is a Black creator. Addison and Charli are white creators. And Jalea was basically left in the dust and is just now sort of getting her credit. But it's a huge monetary issue for these creators. And so it's not just dance trends. It's not just copying. There's a huge compensation issue here. And it's a conversation Black creators are trying to have more and more.
Callan, after that in-app protest last year and also in the wake of the movement following George Floyd's death, TikTok announced it would create an incubator for Black creatives. It also said it would develop a fund to support Black creativity. So have they followed through on that?
They have, and they have put a lot of efforts into making their app more diverse. Earlier this year and last year, I spoke with some people who are on an independent council that helps advise TikTok, and they said that the platform is kind of like worlds away from other social media sites, and that it really does care about diversity and it does care about its Black creators. But I also spoke to Black creators who said it's frustrating that they have to create these programs. It's frustrating that there has to be a sort of separate program for Black creators because they want to be treated just like everyone else, and it shouldn't have to be this thing where there's an extra push to elevate them. They should be getting credit on their own without an extra helping hand.
And Callan, so TikTok's main feed area, it's called the For You page, and it's really what people point to in terms of why this app is so addictive for them, because the algorithm curates videos that are meant for you, and this is based on what you've already interacted with. So how does that affect the visibility of minority creators, I wonder, and what can we do as users to make our feeds more diverse if we're not seeing that show up in that For You page?
Yeah, this has been a long-standing debate because initially last year, after the blackout, TikTok apologized to its Black creators and said that it would try to do better in order to make the platform more diverse, and that included a more diverse For You page. Now, some creators say they've seen a major difference, and again, the For You page is what helps people go viral. It helps people become internet celebrities and possibly celebrities in their own right. But still, there are Black creators who say it's not diverse enough, and what we can do is interact with Black creators, interact with diverse creators, creators of color. That is what will put them back on the For You page. That will help elevate the content. So what we can do just as viewers is interact with that content, but content that we like and enjoy. There are content creators making a wealth of content. We should be seeing a range of them and interacting with diverse creators as well.
Absolutely. Callan Rosenblatt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up more on what we were talking about earlier in the hour, consumer prices reaching their highest levels in more than a decade.
Yeah, we'll tell you what's behind that surge. That's next on Morning News Now. Consumer prices continued to tick higher in September, surging by 5.4% year after year. That's the largest jump in 13 years. NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Rule explains why we're paying more across the board.
Hey there, Savannah and Joe. The inflation numbers are out, and no surprise, prices continue to rise. Now, if you compare them to where they were this time last year, it's a very big jump, over 5%. But remember, this time last year, our economy was largely on lockdown with huge restrictions. Now, everything is open. Consumer demand is up in a very big way, and we're dealing with all sorts of supply chain issues, labor shortages, really shortages across the board. And what are these shortages doing? They are leading to price increases. Two of the main places we are seeing it, at the grocery store and the gas pump. And these are things that people need. It's what they spend on. It's what we consume. It's one of the reasons you're seeing the Social Security Department make their cost of living adjustment for next year the biggest we've seen since the early 80s. They are making an accommodation for the fact that everything out there is costing more. Now, a lot of experts, including Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, has said this is temporary. It is going to work itself out. Every business leader out there that's facing these supply chain issues is trying to take it on and solve for it. And we have to remember where we came from. Where did we come from? We were facing a potential Great Recession, a global pandemic. Now we are on a positive economic trajectory. And even though these supply chain issues and this inflation is dampening things, the economy is still in positive territory and growing.
All right, and our thanks to Stephanie Rowe for that report.
Time now for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
Silvana Hanau is with us this morning. Hey there.
Good morning. Thousands of workers at Deere have gone on strike today. This comes just days after rejecting a new 6-year contract with the tractor maker. The tentative deal with the UAW covered about 10,000 production and maintenance workers at 14 U.S. factories. The last walkout at Deere by the UAW was in 1986 when workers struck for 163 days. But workers feel more emboldened to strike now, given the long hours they put in during the pandemic and because companies are facing a labor shortage. DoorDash has launched a $1 million fund to support local restaurants impacted by natural disasters. The company will hand out $10,000 grants to eligible businesses who can use the funds to pay for essential expenses such as rent, supplies, and payroll. A business owner must operate 3 restaurants or less, and none of those locations may have generated more than $3 million in revenue over the past year. And many people are moving into a new career, and some are also moving to a new location for that job. A new study out today from bestcolleges.com finds Georgia is the best state to change careers. States were ranked on a median income, cost of living, job growth, unemployment, gender pay gap, well-being, and vaccination rates. Georgia is below average on income, well-being, and vaccination rates, but it earned the top spot based on its low cost of living, favorable job growth, and unemployment rate. New Hampshire is second, followed by Utah, Vermont, and Minnesota. Back to you.
Interesting stuff.
There you go. Thank you, Savannah.
Sure thing.
And coming up, what a long, strange trip it's been from the vault to the auction block.
Collectors now have their chance to own some iconic memorabilia from the Grateful Dead. That's after the break, right here on Morning News Now. A somewhat psychedelic auction wraps up today. Sotheby's Auction House is listing more than 200 items from the Grateful Dead's 30-year career. That includes musical instruments and other items fit for a deadhead.
You know, the Grateful Dead is much more than a band. You know, it's a cultural experience.
Art broker behemoth Sotheby's is selling more than 200 items related to American rock band royalty, the Grateful Dead. Some of these items hold greater significance in American history. Take this jumpsuit. In the 1960s, the Grateful Dead teamed up with the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Ken Kesey, to help out with something called the acid tests.
Many predict that there'll be no beautiful summer for the hippies of San Francisco.
Kesey and his entourage, known as the Merry Pranksters, would wear these jumpsuits and host acid parties in the San Francisco Bay Area. There they distribute LSD to the audience and play music.
Then the Warlocks, which became the Grateful Dead, were sort of the house band. So that's where the confluence of all these different countercultural strains come together.
You started out in the 1960s in San Francisco. You were one of the Ken Kesey people. There was a lot of drugs. Do you feel any kind of a sense of responsibility for the use of drugs by lots of young kids who wanted to emulate their hero, you?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't feel a sense of personal responsibility, mostly because I've avoided, or I've tried to avoid, telling people what to do or not do.
Drugs are a big theme of the auction.
I think one of the more interesting lots that we have in the sale is a chemistry set that was owned by Owsley Stanley, who, in addition to being the Dead's sort of sound architect and sound engineer, was also a chemist that was very prolific in his production of LSD back in the 60s.
But some of the most popular items up for sale have to do with the Grateful Dead's sound. Bob Weir's guitars, Mickey Hart's drum set, Ron McKernan's piano, Jerry Garcia's amp, and of course components of the band's famous Wall of Sound.
Which was the Grateful Dead's absolutely historic and majestic live touring rig that weighed tons. That was their idea, to have absolutely clean sound that could reach out 600 feet to the audience.
The auction, which ends today, has attracted Deadheads from around the world, leading to thousands of dollars in bids, with each fan hoping to get their own piece of the Grateful Dead's long, strange trip. And if you can't make it to New York, you can still see and bid on the items on Sotheby's website, but you have to act fast. The auction closes today at 2 p.m. Eastern. I call that a deadhead deadline.
That's good. That's good. You're not a deadhead, you said,
No,
so you
not
won't be. You're not in the queue for any of these.
No, but it's fascinating. It's
It
part
is
of
fascinating.
history, and it gets all aspects of the band and their career.
Absolutely. And because they are such a loyal fan base, I'm sure that there are quite a few people who are excited about that one.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.